I see many high-income Muslim clients complaining about not not being successful in changing their mates or in changing themselves in their relationship, and complaining and being hopeless about never being successful in changing the other person. So I decided to make this video to explain how and why a human being change, and basically why you probably failed to change the person or to change yourself in the past and have a better life. So let's first break down to the basics. I'll explain what is therapy, why we do therapy, how therapy works, and hopefully you understand why you can't change your partner and what you did wrong in the past and what you can change to be successful in changing your partner, or maybe yourself. Maybe there is things you want to change in yourself and you can't. So let's take this example. Here we have Omar, and Omar wants a happy, good life. And on the road of this happy, good life, Omar needs to check a few things. He needs probably a happy, intimate relationship. Overall, studies show that general happiness is highly correlated with the quality of the intimate relationship. So that's probably a very important thing if you want to be happy and have a good life. Maybe there is financial stability and other things, I don't know. This is not exhaustive. It's just to show that there is conditions and things you need to be able to do if you want a happy and good life. So Omar needs to do the trip in this, but Omar has two problems. The first problem is Omar don't know what he should do exactly. So he don't have a map. He don't know the direction of a happy good life. Therefore, Omar needs direction. He needs help to find the right direction and know what to do. Usually this is the role of coaches and consultants. That problem is a massive problem. That's not a small problem. The problem of getting your right answers and knowing the direction and be efficient in the way you make changes is a huge problem. And so I'm not minimizing the role of coaches and consultants, because that's really half of what you need to do if you want a happy and good life. But my claim is most people have a rough idea of what they need to do. Most people have a rough idea of what's a sane lifestyle and a sane happy life. And so we have a direction problem, we have a knowledge problem, but that's not enough to explain why people have an unhappy and unhealthy life. A lot of time people know the direction, but they have another problem, which is a theory into practice problem. They can't make the trip. They want to make the trip, but they are unsuccessful. And this is another very massive problem. A lot of people, they have the right direction, but when they try, they just fail. And it's not easy. It's very hard to make the road and the trip to a happy, good life. And so most of the time, what happens is Omar wants to have this good life. He's trying to make the roads toward happy, good life. One of the stalemates is happy, intimate relationship. So he tries to have this happy, intimate relationship, but Omar has blocks on his road. And these blocks, a lot of time, they aren't external blocks. They are internal blocks on the form of what I call automatic maladaptive things. It can be automatic maladaptive actions, can be cognition, can be emotion, can be motivation, and that's it. From my experience, it always falls into these four broad categories. What does maladaptive mean? Maladaptive basically means that it's useless or maybe harmful for Omar, for the person trying to, or the person having these actions, cognition, emotion, motivation. So yeah, it's maladaptive, and usually what it means as well is maybe it serves a function in the past and it was useful in the past, but it's no longer useful for for Omar, sorry. It's no longer useful for him. And it just makes it harder for him, and he can't have a happy, good life because of these internal blocks. Let me develop a bit about these 4 categories. So we have actions. Here, I say actions, I don't say behavior. And the reason I don't say behavior is because it's unclear for me that thoughts, for example, isn't a form of behavior. So you could have cognitive behaviors, maybe even emotional behaviors. So it's just to make clear that there is a difference between behavior and action. Here we're speaking about actions. Usually, behaviorists divide actions into 2 broad problems. So it can be skill. So Omar is trying to do the action, but he has a skill problem, so he can't make it accurately. Or it can be habits as well. So it's just hard for Omar to just make this action on an everyday basis. Now we have cognition. Specialists of cognitive therapies usually divide cognition into diverse kinds of things. You can have thoughts, you can have belief, you can have standards. It comes into cognition for many cognitive therapists. You can have expectation. The idea is you have maladaptive thoughts, belief, standards, expectation. It would fall into this broad category of maladaptive cognition. So maladaptive thoughts, which are useless, harmful thoughts, maladaptive beliefs, useless, harmful beliefs, maladaptive standards, useless, harmful standards, and etc. You understand the point. Here you have emotion. I won't speak about emotion a lot, even though that's my specialty. But I won't speak a lot because emotion is a bit complex and it would require more time for me to explain that. But there is a difference between emotion and motivation. Even though for many years I didn't like this distinction, from a purely neuroscientific point of view, it's true. Emotion has different pathway in the brain than motivation. Even though I know some neuroscientists of affect here may hear that and may cringe a little bit, that's a totally valid view of neuroscience, and I think it's the most it's the most accurate view of neuroscience regarding the state of research right now. So you have difference between emotion and motivation, and all of these they are automatic, so they are uncontrolled actions, cognition, emotions, motivation in the life of Omar, and because of that Omar can't make the road to a happy and good life. So what Omar needs, he needs to change these automatic maladaptive things. He needs to suppress it to have new automatic adaptive actions, cognitions, emotions, motivation. And that's the best definition to therapy. That's the role of a therapist. The work of a therapist is to change these automatic maladaptive things into new automatic adaptive things. Here, the automatic is very important. The work of a therapist isn't finished until he made the new adaptive actions, cognitions, emotions, motivation automatic, which means the clients supposedly at the end of the therapy doesn't need to think about it. It needs to be natural. It doesn't need high effort and high motivation to have these changes in his life. Here is the role of a therapist. Therapists need to do therapy to suppress these automatic maladaptive things into new automatic adaptive things. I want to say that there isn't a clear line between a coach, consultant, and therapist nowadays. The line is a bit blurred, and the reason for that is many coach, consultant are actually therapists at the same time, and a lot of time they took some techniques and some approaches from therapists. So that there may be a blurred line nowadays, but definitely a coach and consultant would focus more on these what should I do question. The difference between a coach and a consultant, same thing, it's a bit blurred nowadays, but a coach would be more a long-term following thing. So it would really follow the person on a long-term basis. As a consultant, it will be more a one-time basis. That's how I understand the differences between both. And a therapist, obviously they need this what should I do question as well, even though the main works is this changing these automatic maladaptive and things into new automatic adaptive things. That the main works, but yeah, they definitely need this what should I do question first to determine what changes need to be made for the patient, for the clients, Omar. So that's how therapy works. And let's go deeper now. So we need to understand first why we say automatic here and why they are automatic at the first place. Why these actions, cognition, emotions, motivation are automatic and uncontrolled for Omar. The reason is it's because it's wired in the nervous system. Because it's wired in the nervous system, Omar does it uncontrollably and unconsciously. And therefore, the only option for a therapist is to rewire the nervous system with what we call neuroplasticity, or we can call it LTP as well, long-term potentiation. And really, a therapist, his main role is just neuroplasticity. Just need to find a way to rewire this unfunctioning nervous system. You need to find a way to actually I should not say unfunctioning, it's functioning well most of the time, but these maladaptive things wired in the nervous system, you need to change it through therapy. So that's the work. The main tool of therapist is neuroplasticity, LTP, long-term potentiation. Let's define it now. Neuroplasticity, long-term potentiation, is the ability of the brain to change with experience. So new experience change the brain wiring. And thank God we have this capacity to rewire our brain. It's important for us to adapt to different life situations. And we can use that to change these automatic maladaptive actions, cognitions, emotion, motivations into new automatic adaptive ones. That would be the work of a therapist, and a therapist need to understand that. Now there is really two questions I use to determine what approach and what methods and how I work with a client. And that's important for you to understand. Why it's important? Because when you understand how I work and what questions I ask, I think it will be clearer for you why you didn't change your partner in the past, or why you can't change here, and why it's so difficult for you. When you see the difference between a pro working and you working, you understand really why it was so tough for you, and maybe it will give you a bit of hope to see that actually it's not because the situation is hopeless or the partner is hopeless, but it's more an approach, techniques, skill, problem that made you unsuccessful in the past. So really, when I'm working, I have two main questions, which is what question and a how question. What question is what do I need to change in this client? And how question is how I need to make the change with the client. And for the what question, I have two questions. So in this what question, I ask myself two questions. The first is, which approach is the more efficient? And usually you can classify every approach, every techniques, every methods into three broad school of methods. That distinction is mine, by the way, but I think it's 100% accurate, and you'll understand why. So really the question is, should we focus on action? Should we focus on cognition? Should we focus on emotion? Let me go there a little bit and explain you why. So Omar comes to you and have maladaptive action, cognition, emotions, motivation. Most of the time, he don't have just one maladaptive things in his life. Most of the time, he don't just have maladaptive actions and that's it. He has everything. So it has maladaptive actions, some maladaptive cognition, some maladaptive emotion, some maladaptive motivation. A lot of time it's a blend of all of that. It's a mix of these. If you take famous psychological disorder, for example, if you take addiction is very much a motivation maladaptive disorder, which means the person has maladaptive motivation, is motivated to do different things, uncontrolled harmful motivation in his life. But it's also the case that addiction provoke maladaptive actions from this motivation disorder. If you take anxiety disorder, for example, anxiety disorder is emotional. A lot of times, emotional maladaptive things because it's anxiety, which is an emotion. But there is a lot of maladaptive cognition here. People that suffer from anxiety disorder, they have a lot of unwanted thoughts, which are maladaptive thoughts. Depression disorder, there is a lot of maladaptive emotion, but maladaptive actions as well. Maladaptive cognition as well. So as you see, this disorder, they rarely, probably never, involve only one kind of maladaptive things. A lot of time it's a blend, it's a mix of all of these. So the question is, if you want to be fast and efficient in our work, where should we focus first? Should we focus on actions, cognitions, emotions? That's really the question. But all approach, without exceptions, would want to change everything. So it's not an outcome question. We all agree that everything needs to change. If someone comes depressed, he need to change his maladaptive actions, cognitions, emotions. Everything needs to change and be suppressed into new adaptive ones. The question is, if you want to be fast and efficient, where should you focus first? And then you have 3 answers. The first answer is you should focus on actions, changing actions. The other answer is you should focus on cognition. And last answer is you should focus on emotion. Basically, the first approach say, if you change action, then cognition and emotion will change after. The second approach say, no, you should start with cognition and then emotion and action will change. And the last one say, no, if you should start with emotion, if you can change emotion, then you'll change action and cognition. It's really a quickness question. It's about quickness and efficiency. How fast can you make the change if you focus in one aspect? Here, as you can see, you can classify most therapeutic approaches into these 3 broad schools. So if you take traditional behavioral therapies, it's more action focused. A strategic therapy, it's more action focused. Solution focused therapy, it's more action focused. So all these therapies would work more on changing action. Remember, action is skill and habits. They would like to focus on that to make the changes. Now, cognition focused approaches would focus more on cognition. Here, traditionally, we have CBT, so cognitive behavioral therapy would fall here. If you change cognition, then you can change behavior. ACT, so ACT is acceptance and commitment therapy. It's a bit unclear why it should fall, but I think from my experience practicing ACT, it would be more in this school, but I could accept to put it in other school because it's a bit of an integrative approach and it takes from many different schools. But from my understanding, it's more a cognition-focused approach. They have narrative therapy, definitely cognition-focused approach. Psychodynamic, so Freud's, Jung, all these classical psychoanalyst approaches. Insight-focused approaches is another term for this. It's cognition-focused. I won't explain why, it's a bit complicated, but it works a lot on the unconscious and conscious, and when you speak about conscious, it's more a cognition thing. Where here you have emotion focused. So emotion focused say, no, it's new emotion that create the changes, and here you have more. You have this humanistic approach, so Carl Roger approach fall in this category for me. You have a Gestalt therapy, definitely. It's a kind of emotion-focused approach, and EFT, emotionally focused therapy, of course, is emotion-focused. So that's the first question I want to ask. What approach should I use? Should I be more action-focused, cognition-focused, emotion-focused? And the winner here is always, for me, the right answer is always emotion-focused. So that's the winner. That's what we want to focus on. We want to focus on emotion. And when I'll explain the how here, you'll understand the reason why emotion focus is the winner. And that's why I specialize in emotion focused approaches. Now, regarding the what question, what I need to change in Omar, there is another question I want to ask. And here I have a graph that is useful for me. So on the x axis, you have impact and velocity. Impact and velocity is the question of what or how much this change impact the person's life. So when I want to see what I need to change, my answer would be I need to consider how much this person's life would change if I make this change in his life, and if I can suppress this maladaptive thing and replace it by another adaptive one, how much his life will be changing. It's an impact velocity question. It's a bit of a leverage question, which is for one unit of change, how many units of outcome, of impact, of changes in his life can we have. So this is definitely important, because you don't want to spend years changing everything and making a lot of small changes that have a few impact in the person's life. You want to be as efficient as possible. From my experience working with high income, successful Muslim couple, we don't have time to spend years in therapy. They just want a better life, and they want quality works. They don't want cheap works. And what makes the difference between qualitative works and cheap works, from my experience and from my understanding, is how much impact you can make in this client's life. So I want impact and velocity, and I want things to be structural. So structural, what I mean by structural changes is how much unconscious, deep these changes can be made in the person's life, which is important because, like we say, we want new automatic adaptive actions, emotions, cognitions, motivations. It needs to be automatic, and the amount of automativeness you can gain depends of how much structural and deep the changes you can make on these clients. So I want things to be structural, and the more unconscious, deep is the changes, the better it is. And so usually when I decide what changes I need to make for helping these clients, I'm focusing here, I'm trying to work in these quadrants here, high impact, high velocity, and very structural kind of changes. That's where I want to focus. I'll show you a few examples of how it works. So if you take work on actions, for example, if I had to teach someone 5 icebreakers for him to have a better conversation with his wife, it would be something not very structural, because that's just a few glitch and tactics you can use in some very precise situation, and it wouldn't be very impactful, so it would be more here. But if I had to do compliment training and teach him the right principles behind a good compliment and work on that, it would be a bit more structural, because it would be possible to apply it to more situation, probably, and probably it would change more pattern in the way he communicates, but it would still not be very structural and not very impactful. Regarding action, now you could be empathy training. That would be way more structural. That would be working on this kind of internal deep skill, where we can expect many changes in the person. But obviously, if I had to teach abstract thinking, it would be structural, but it wouldn't have a massive impact in the relationship of Omar. Maybe it would have impact in other area of his life, but as you see, it's not because it's structural that it's impactful. I had example with cognition works as well. So working on intrusive thoughts, it can be impactful. I should probably put it here, but it's not very structural. As for working on beliefs, for example, belief about life and relationship, let's say Omar is persuaded that every time her wife is angry, it's because she don't respect him. That would be a problematic belief, and it would probably be here. It would have impact, and it would be structural. Now, regarding works with emotions, so here I put secondary emotions. Go back to my videos about conflict to understand what it means. Usually it's emotion like anger, frustration. So work with these emotions would be quite structural. It would be a deep work with the person. As for impact, it would be less impactful, for example, that working with deep insecurities, which would be the most structural, and that would be the most impactful, I guess. So as you see, that's one of the reasons I'm emotion focused with my approaches, because usually emotions are both structural and very impactful in the person life. So that's why it's always in the lower quadrants. Maybe not always, but most of the time works with emotions go down here. Now there is the how question, which is how can I suppress these maladaptive things to new adaptive ones, and how I can rewire this nervous system using neuroplasticity. And it all comes in the definition of neuroplasticity. Neuroplasticity is the ability of the brain to change with experience. So really the question is what kind of experience I should have in my therapy room with a client for this client to make these changes. That's the only question I need to ask for the how. And so here it's divided into two metrics for me. The first one, so this one is a bit interesting. So here on one axis you have heal and make things worse, and another one you have traumatic and healthy. So the question is, the experience, is it healthy, a healthy kind of experience, or is it a traumatic kind of experience? There isn't a clear definition of what should be traumatic and healthy. Some therapists may say that traumatic is everything that's fear-based and healthy is not fear-based, but I don't agree with this definition, because sometimes you can have healthy fears helping the clients. So I'm still unsure on how you can define this. My advice is, if you are afraid of having traumatic kinds of changes, then you should rely on a professional. And what I would do personally to make sure that the way I work is not traumatic, and this experience I use to change the client's nervous system is not traumatic, I just go back at outcome studies and observational studies. So it's all based on observations. When you do outcome studies, you usually control long-term side effects of the treatment, and so we can see if it's effective and if it's not traumatic in any sort of way. And so here the curve would be like this. It would be like this, which is when it's traumatic, and the more traumatic it is, the more you make things worse, and the healthier it is, the more you heal the person. So the more you create new adaptive behaviors, thoughts, actions, motivations, emotions, the more healthy it is, the more you create new adaptive things. And the more traumatic it is, you actually make things worse, which means you actually create more maladaptive cognition, actions, and so on and so forth. So yeah, and that's where a lot of you guys mess up when you come to see me and say, I didn't change, I didn't succeed in changing my partner. Most of the time, what you did, you made things worse, because you try to change the other person by providing traumatic kinds of experience. It doesn't have to be very traumatic to make things worse. So even if it was a little bit traumatic for the person, it was still traumatic, and that's the reason why you make things worse. Another question here, it's this intensity repetition scale. So the nervous system is rewired by new experience, and really, how many experience you need to do to rewire the nervous system is a question of repetition and intensity of the experience. The more intensive the experience is, the less repetition you need. And the less intensive it is, the more repetition you need. So every approach always lean into one side or the other. For example, this emotion-focused approach will try their best to lean more on that side of this scale. By the way, it's always in between. So it's never zero intensity and it's never zero repetition. If it's zero repetition, it would be a traumatic. The only things that can have a one trial rewiring of the nervous system is traumatic kinds of experience. And like I told you, we don't want that in our therapy session. So no, it's never a one-time repetition thing. We always need a repetition, but the more intensive the experience is, the less repetition we actually need. And this emotion-focused approach would lean more here. As for the other one, the cognition-focused and action-focused is usually a very low-intensity experience, so you need actually more rep. It's more here. You need more reps to make the changes. It's lean more in that side, but it's always in between. And definitely modern kinds of cognition and action-focused therapies would try to make it more intensive. But the reason from my experience, some coaches don't lean towards more intensive experience, even though there is more leverage, because if it's more intensive, then you need less repetition, and so you can have deeper and faster results. The reason from my experience is either they are incompetent, so that I don't actually know how to do that, and or it may be because they are lazy. Really, to make this intensive experience in the therapy room is harder. It's definitely more work for the therapist, but I tend to lean more here, and my vision of qualitative therapy is more here, because it's more works for the therapist, but it's less work for the clients, because when you have low intensity experience, what it means is you need more repetition of this experience, and a lot of time it means more repetition for the clients, which means more homeworks, more works at home, and a lot of effort to just repeat this new experience until it's wired in the nervous system, which for me is cheap therapy. Good therapy should be fast and deep, using intensive experience, even though, of course, you need a more skilled therapist to do that, and it's harder for the therapist. And it's harder in general, but faster result and better results is more qualitative for me. Let me show you how it works. So let's say I'm working with Omar on deep insecurities. If I had to make a lecture to force Omar to have a lecture about the link between relationship and deep insecurities, I think it would be low on intensity scale, because Omar would probably be bored and feel forced to do it. So if I had to do such experience, I would have to repeat that a lot and a lot and a lot until I can see some changes. But for example, if I could create or help create this experience with Omar, where you have this feeling of connecting the dots between things that has been a struggle for him and his deep insecurities. This experience is more intensive, so it would probably need less repetition for seeing any changes in Omar. Now, if I could help Omar feel loved and have this experience of receiving genuine altruistic love, probably this would be the highest in intensity. This would be probably wonderful for Omar, because he has his deep insecurities. Let's say, for example, Omar feel unloved and unlovable. I can then produce this experience in my therapy room. Probably this kind of experience wouldn't need a lot of repetition. Maybe it would need a few, but it wouldn't need a lot of repetition until we can see changes in Omar. Now, now that you have all the elements in place, let's explain why you struggle to change your partner in your marriage and you are stuck in your relationship. First, maybe you failed this what question. So maybe you didn't knew what to change in the other person. And so maybe you focused on the wrong thing here. Maybe you didn't focus on emotion enough. You focused on cognition. A lot of men do this mistake. So they try to change the other person's belief, thoughts, and control the other person's thought, where, like I told you, is very ineffective, because, like I told you, you need to change new rewiring with new experience, and for experience to be rewired, you need intensive experience, and usually these are low intensity kind of experience. So that's maybe one of the reason. Another reason is you focused on something that is not structural and low impact, so you don't see the impact and you get impatient. But most of the time you have a how question and how problem as well. So from my experience with couple, a lot of time it's more here that there is a problem, so they try traumatic methods to make the other person change, like threatening, like withdrawing, like avoiding the other person, like silence treatment, passive aggressive remarks, and whatnot. All these kind of traumatic approach. And I use traumatic, maybe the term is impressive. I'm not saying it's high trauma here. I'm saying it's even if it's low traumatic experience, it's actually make things worse. And even when people try healthy manner, so if you try healthy conversations, a lot of the time the problem is, like I told you, you use the wrong approach. What is wrong here? And here on this intensity repetition scale is usually low intensity. So it may be healthy, it may be helping, it may be healing, but because it's low intensity, it also means that it's very it needs a lot of repetition. Because it's like, let me provide you an example. People will try to educate their partner. They'll use what we call in therapy psychoeducation, which is explaining to the other person what he needs to change and why it's unproductive. And psychoeducation is usually a very boring experience, so it's low intensity. And because it's low intensity, you need a lot of repetition. Most of the time, you would need to repeat this experience hundreds or thousands of times until you see changes. So obviously, if all the healthy manner you tried are this kind of manner, just sitting and explaining the other person in a healthy manner why his maladaptive action, cognitions, emotions, and motivations need to change, it won't work. I'll be more precise with my example. Many people comes to me and say, oh, my partner don't change because he's not motivated. And for them, it means they are not committed. But like I told you, their partner, they want happy life. And because they want happy life, they want a happy, intimate relationship. And they aren't different. So why this partner seems unmotivated? Here it's probably you have a maladaptive motivation problem. You can't produce the right motivation, and you can find many reasons why, but that's a maladaptive motivation problem. How did you try to fix it? Most of the time they try to fix it by criticizing the partner, which is traumatic. A lot of times it's bad critics in a bad manner. But even if you had a good conversation with a partner, usually it sounds like a lecturing, which is a boring experience. So you need a lot of repetition until you see the motivation change in your partner and you see the partner doing the work. So this is a wrong approach, and that's why you failed. And even in other circumstances where you can feel the partner is motivated, but you can see actions, cognitions, emotions in the partner that are problematic. And it seems that you just try to change it and can't change it. And then you'll say things like, oh, it's just a personality disorder, or it's just traumatic history, and so on and so forth. You just blame the other person's history and the other person's personality. Even in these instances, actually, the reason why the partner didn't change probably is because you tried things that are low intensity experience to make the other person change. So you need more repetitions. And usually you just abandoned too soon to see any changes. And you actually right to abandon, I think, because a more effective manner to work would be to work on more intensive experience to have faster results and to see changes in a matter of weeks and a matter of day. That would be my approach, and that's what I call qualitative therapeutic works, and that's what I strive for by having high impacts, high structural changes. And I have these changes using high intensity experience with my high intensity healthy experience with my clients. We call it as well emotional corrective experience in my practice, and it's usually very useful, and we can have changes in less than 30 days. A lot of time you can fix everything in less than 30 days, and then you just need follow-up sessions. That's it for today. I hope it's clear. Obviously, these principles are the same if you want to do individual work. So if you want to work on yourself and not on your partner, and if you're not working on the relation, it's the same principle. It's basically the principle of how we can change actions, cognitions, emotions, and motivations in human being. Wallah alam. If you like the video, please share a comment and tell me what you thought about the video. All this feedback are helping me go in the right direction, help you guys better. And if you found it useful, please share it with other person, with people that may need this content. Please share it. I'm not saying that because I want my channel to grow. I actually don't care if my channel grow. I just want to help people that can be helped through my channel. So just share it with people that can be helped with my channel. And assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.